The hushed courtroom watched in disbelief as Jasmine Carter whispered something to her service dog Shadow. Suddenly, the German Shepherd executed a perfect tactical maneuver only taught to elite Special Forces canines. Judge Walters dropped his gavel, his face ashen. The black woman they all dismissed had just changed American military history forever. If you're ready to witness how a single whispered command shattered decades of discrimination and revealed a truth the military tried to bury, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join us for more untold stories of extraordinary individuals fighting against injustice. What would you do if your entire identity was questioned because of the color of your skin? Jasmine Carter checked her watch as she approached the entrance of Atlanta Veterans Memorial Hospital. The appointment for her PTSD treatment was in 15 minutes, just enough time to pass through security. Her service dog Shadow, a sleek German Shepherd with intelligent eyes, walked perfectly positioned at her left side. The dog's disciplined demeanor reflected years of specialized training, moving with the same silent precision as his handler. Jasmine's calm exterior concealed the anxiety that always preceded these visits. At 41, the black woman stood tall with military posture, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing simple civilian clothes that couldn't quite hide her athletic build. As Jasmine entered the hospital lobby, she noticed the immediate change in the security guard's demeanor. He straightened his posture, eyes narrowing, as they followed her movement across the marble floor. "Ma'am, no pets allowed in the facility," he called out, stepping from behind his desk. Jasmine stopped maintaining her composure as she'd done countless times before. "Shadow is my service dog, not a pet," she explained, reaching into her bag for documentation. "I have all his paperwork and my VA authorization right here." Before she could produce the documents, a white man in a tailored suit approached his name badge, identifying him as Richard Whitfield, Hospital Administrator. "Is there a problem here?" he asked the guard, not addressing Jasmine directly. "She's trying to bring a dog inside," the guard responded. Whitfield turned to Jasmine with a dismissive glance. "We have strict policies about animals in the hospital. Service animals must be properly identified." Jasmine calmly presented Shadow's service vest, VA documentation, and her veteran ID card. Whitfield examined her ID with exaggerated scrutiny, turning it over multiple times as if searching for evidence of forgery. "Navy," he questioned, his tone suggesting disbelief. "What was your role?" Jasmine maintained her composure, though this was far from the first time she'd faced such questioning. "I served in special operations," she replied simply. A Vietnam-era veteran in a wheelchair nearby spoke up. "Leave her be. She's got proper documentation, and that dog's better behaved than most people in here." Walter Jenkins, according to the veteran hat he wore, had been observing the interaction with growing disgust. Whitfield ignored the older man's intervention. "Special operations," he repeated with a smirk. "I'm going to need to verify this." He motioned to a security officer. "Thomas, come take a look at this ID." The head of security, Thomas Bennett, approached with unwarranted urgency. He was a large man with military-style haircut and a demeanor that suggested he enjoyed his authority. Bennett barely glanced at the documentation before handing it back. "Women aren't allowed in special operations," he stated flatly, "especially not black ones." Jenkins protested again from his wheelchair. "That's not right." "You can't just assume, sir, this doesn't concern you," Bennett interrupted, then turned back to Jasmine. "I'm going to need additional verification of your service record." Jasmine reached into her bag again, producing her Navy discharge papers. The document clearly stated Special Operations under her service classification. Bennett laughed, sharing a knowing look with Whitfield. "This has to be fake. There's no way you qualified for that program." Jasmine remained silent, years of training, helping her maintain composure in the face of blatant discrimination. Shadow stayed perfectly still beside her, though his eyes remained alert, tracking every movement in the lobby. "I have an appointment in 10 minutes, Jasmine finally said. "My documentation is in order. I'd like to proceed to my treatment." Whitfield crossed his arms. "Not until we verify these papers. We take stolen valor very seriously here." The phrase stolen valor caused several heads to turn in the lobby. Jenkins continued recording the interaction on his phone, having started when he sensed the confrontation escalating. "You should be ashamed," he called out. "This woman served our country." Whitfield signaled to the front desk. "Call the police. We have someone refusing to comply with hospital regulations." Jasmine began recording on her own phone as well, keeping her voice steady. "I'm not refusing anything. I've provided all required documentation." 20 minutes later, Officer Derek Simmons arrived, immediately conferring with Bennett and Whitfield before approaching Jasmine. "Ma'am, I understand you're causing a disturbance." Jasmine kept her phone recording. "I'm here for a scheduled medical appointment and have been denied entry despite providing all required documentation." Simmons glanced at her papers perfunctorily. "The hospital has the right to verify identification before allowing entry. If you continue refusing to comply, I'll have to escort you off the premises." "For what charge?" Jasmine asked calmly. "Creating a disturbance in a medical facility," Simmons replied, hand resting casually on his holster. "Best you leave now before this escalates." Shadow remained perfectly disciplined throughout the confrontation, never reacting to the increasing tension. His behavior alone demonstrated training far beyond standard service animals. Jenkins continued recording from his position. "I'm getting all this," he announced loudly. "Clear discrimination happening right here at the VA." Jasmine assessed the situation with tactical precision, recognizing the potential for dangerous escalation. "I'll leave," she finally said, "but I want it noted that I've been denied medical treatment despite having proper documentation." As she turned to leave, Officer Simmons muttered, "Another one looking for special treatment." Jasmine pretended not to hear as she walked out with Shadow at her side, maintaining perfect military bearing. Outside the hospital, Jenkins maneuvered his wheelchair to follow her. "That was disgraceful," he said. "I got it all on video. What they did wasn't right." "Thank you," Jasmine replied quietly. "It happens more often than you'd think." Jenkins nodded grimly. "I'm sharing this with my veterans group. People need to see this." By evening, Jenkins had posted the video online. Within hours, it had thousands of views, but not the kind of attention Jasmine needed. The comment section filled with skepticism about her service claims. "No way a woman was in special ops," read one comment. "Definitely fake," said another. "Trying to get special benefits." A local news station picked up the story, running a segment titled "Stolen Valor or Discrimination." They interviewed a military commentator, Colonel Preston, who stated with absolute certainty it's biologically impossible for a woman, particularly a black woman, to meet the physical requirements for Navy Special Warfare units. The military doesn't lower standards for diversity. The hashtag #FakeVeteran began trending locally. That night, Jasmine returned to her modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Atlanta. The space was neat and minimally decorated with subtle military mementos, carefully positioned throughout. A shadow box containing a Navy Trident insignia hung on the wall, though no photos or specific unit identifications were displayed. Shadow performed an unusual security routine upon entering checking corners and specific points in the apartment that suggested specialized training for threat detection. Jasmine watched him work her expression, finally revealing the exhaustion and frustration she'd contained all day. "Good boy," she whispered, as Shadow completed his sweep and returned to her side. She knew what was coming next. The military community was small, and accusations of stolen valor spread quickly. She'd seen it happen before, to others, from her unit. The difference was they could never tell the truth. The classified nature of their service had become both shield and prison. 1 week after the hospital incident, Jasmine collected her mail to find a certified letter from the Department of Defense. Her hands remained steady as she opened it, though her heart rate increased. The letter was coldly official. She was being charged with falsifying military documents and stolen valor. Effective immediately, her VA benefits were suspended pending investigation. Shadow sensed her distress, pressing his body against her leg in a practiced grounding technique. Jasmine placed one hand on his head, focusing on the solid reality of his presence. This wasn't the first time she'd faced accusations, but it was the first formal charge. The walls of her apartment seemed to close in as memories surfaced. Growing up in Detroit with her grandmother after her parents' death in a car accident. The dilapidated school with outdated textbooks and broken laboratory equipment. The track coach who recognized her potential, despite having no budget for proper training equipment. Running before dawn on cracked sidewalks, determined to earn a scholarship. Jasmine remembered her high school counselor's dismissive expression when she'd mentioned her military aspirations. Nursing would be more appropriate for someone like you, the woman had suggested, never making eye contact. The military isn't really a good fit for young black women looking for a career. But Jasmine had enlisted in the Navy at 18 anyway, against all advice. She'd scored in the top percentile on every aptitude test, shocking recruiters who hadn't expected excellence from a black girl from Detroit. Now, 13 years after her discharge, the system was once again telling her she couldn't possibly be who she claimed. Jasmine took Shadow for a walk, needing movement to process the news. Her benefits provided critical support for her PTSD treatment and medical care for injuries sustained during service. Without them, her carefully constructed civilian life would quickly unravel. The next morning, Jasmine visited the local Veterans Support Center, hoping to find guidance. The center director, Marcus Reynolds, greeted her with visible discomfort. "I saw the news," he said, avoiding direct eye contact. "This is a complicated situation." "I need legal representation," Jasmine replied simply. "Someone familiar with military law." Reynolds hesitated before responding. "There's an attorney named Sophia Diaz who handles veterans cases. She might be willing to talk to you." He wrote down the contact information, sliding it across the desk rather than handing it directly to her. "For what it's worth, I hope you can clear this up." His tone suggested he believed the accusations. After Jasmine left, Reynolds made a phone call to Sophia Diaz. "I just referred someone to you," he explained. "Jasmine Carter. She's claiming Special Operations Service, but between us I have serious doubts. The whole thing seems fishy. No woman has ever completed SEAL training, especially not a black woman from Detroit." Sophia Diaz, a sharp-minded attorney with 10 years of experience in military cases, thanked Reynolds for the information. "I'll form my own opinion after meeting her," she replied diplomatically. When Jasmine arrived at Sophia's small office the following day, the attorney was reviewing the hospital video that had now accumulated over 50,000 views online. The comment section had devolved into racist and sexist attacks, questioning not just Jasmine's service, but her character and intelligence. "Tell me your side," Sophia said after introductions, noting how Shadow positioned himself between Jasmine and the door, a protective posture that seemed almost tactical. Jasmine recounted the hospital incident without embellishment. When she finished, Sophia leaned forward. "I need to be direct. Were you in Naval Special Warfare, as your discharge papers state?" "Yes," Jasmine answered simply. "But you understand why people are skeptical. No woman has officially completed SEAL training." "I understand the official position," Jasmine replied carefully. Sophia studied her potential client with growing interest. There was something in Jasmine's demeanor that contradicted the fraud narrative. Her posture, her situational awareness, the way she'd scanned the office upon entering, and especially the unusual behavior of her service dog. Shadow wasn't just well-trained, he demonstrated patterns consistent with military working dogs. "I'll take your case," Sophia decided. "But I need to verify your service record." Sophia's investigation hit immediate roadblocks. Basic Navy records confirmed Jasmine's enlistment and honorable discharge, but everything related to her specific assignments and training appeared redacted with the simple notation, "classified." When Sophia contacted the Department of Defense for clarification, she received the standard response, "Information redacted for national security purposes." Meanwhile, Jasmine's situation deteriorated rapidly. Her engineering firm, Wilson & Associates, where she'd worked for 5 years designing specialized mechanical systems, terminated her employment. "The publicity creates liability issues for our government contracts," her supervisor explained apologetically. "Once this is cleared up, we'll reconsider your position." Her landlord delivered an eviction notice the same week, citing pressure from other tenants uncomfortable living near someone accused of stolen valor. Local veterans organizations publicly denounced her sight unseen. Anonymous threats appeared at her door. "Stolen valor deserves punishment, and frauds don't deserve benefits meant for real heroes." One night, Shadow alerted to someone attempting to break into her apartment, demonstrating an unusual tactical response. Rather than barking, he positioned himself strategically in the darkness, moving with the silent efficiency of a trained military working dog. The intruder fled when Jasmine turned on the lights. Sophia witnessed Shadow's behavior during a meeting at Jasmine's apartment the next day. The dog performed a security sweep before allowing the attorney to fully enter, checking corners and potential hiding places with methodical precision. "Where did you get this dog?" Sophia asked, watching Shadow return to a vigilant position near Jasmine. "He was my working dog during my last deployment," Jasmine answered after a moment's hesitation. "The military made an exception to allow me to adopt him after my discharge. His training made him unsuitable for most civilian homes." "What kind of training?" Jasmine met Sophia's eyes directly. "The kind that's still classified." The situation escalated when a military blogger posted Jasmine's personal information online, including her address and phone number. Protesters began gathering outside her apartment complex with signs reading "Stolen Valor" and "Real Veterans Only." Jasmine observed them from her window, her expression betraying nothing. Shadow remained at her side, alert but calm. "Why not just tell them the truth?" Sophia asked during a phone call that evening. "You clearly served. Your records exist but are classified. There must be someone who can verify your service without compromising security." "It doesn't work that way," Jasmine replied. "Everything about my unit was compartmentalized. Even admitting its existence would violate my security clearance." Sophia sighed in frustration. "The preliminary hearing is in 3 days. Judge Howard Walters has been assigned to the case. He's a Vietnam veteran, tough on crime, especially anything he perceives as disrespecting the military." "I'm familiar with the type," Jasmine said quietly. Sophia continued reviewing the scant evidence they had. Jasmine's basic training records were exemplary, showing she'd broken several physical fitness records. Then came an 18-month gap before her appearance in special operations training, followed by another gap before her discharge. Shadow's adoption papers listed him simply as a military working dog with no specific unit association. However, his behavior patterns matched specialized tactical K-9 units. He responded to Jasmine's commands with unusual precision, often before she verbalized them. He constantly monitored entry points and demonstrated protective positioning that went beyond standard service dog training. Sophia began to wonder what she'd gotten herself into. If Jasmine was telling the truth, they were fighting not just public opinion but an entire system designed to deny her existence. If she was lying, Sophia was risking her professional reputation on an elaborate fraud. Either way, the deck was stacked against a black woman claiming achievements the military insisted were impossible. The federal courthouse steps teemed with protesters when Jasmine arrived for her preliminary hearing. News vans lined the street, cameras trained on the entrance. Signs waved above the crowd, "Respect real veterans, stolen valor is a crime," and others with explicitly racist messages targeting Jasmine. Shadow remained perfectly positioned at her left side, his training evident in how he navigated the hostile crowd without reaction. Sophia met them at a side entrance, noting the racial slurs mixed with accusations of fraud hurled at her client. "Judge Walters has a military background and a reputation for being tough on fraud cases," she warned as they walked through security. "He's also known for making up his mind early." The courtroom was packed when they entered. Military veterans filled the gallery, many wearing service insignia, and regarding Jasmine with open hostility. Assistant U.S. Attorney Cameron Mitchell sat at the prosecution table, arranging documents with confident precision. His Navy veteran status was well known in legal circles, as were his political aspirations. This high-profile case aligned perfectly with his planned congressional run. Judge Howard Walters entered, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and rigid posture that revealed his military background. His gaze swept the courtroom before settling briefly on Jasmine and Shadow. "I see we have an animal in my courtroom," he remarked, frowning. "Service dog, Your Honor," Sophia clarified. "Properly documented and necessary for the defendant's medical condition." Walters made a dismissive sound. "Very well. But at the first disruption it leaves." Mitchell rose for his opening statement, his voice practiced and resonant. "Your Honor, This case represents one of the most egregious examples of stolen valor this court has seen. The defendant, Jasmine Carter, has falsely claimed service in naval special warfare, an elite military unit that has never included female operators. Her fraud dishonors every legitimate service member and exploits benefits meant for true heroes. The gallery murmured approval as Mitchell continued. We will present irrefutable evidence that Miss Carter fabricated her service record to obtain undeserved veterans' benefits and special treatment. This deliberate fraud against the government and the American people must be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Mitchell's first witness was Commander Brian Reynolds, current training officer for Naval Special Warfare. "Commander, has any woman ever completed SEAL training?" Mitchell asked. "No, sir," Reynolds answered confidently. "The physical requirements are beyond female physiological capabilities. The program is designed to select only the most elite male operators." And specifically regarding the defendant's claim of serving during the period of 2005 to 2013, "Absolutely impossible, sir. No women were even permitted to attempt the training during that period." Sophia rose for cross-examination. "Commander, are you familiar with all classified special operations programs conducted during that period?" Reynolds hesitated. "I'm familiar with all official programs." "Just to clarify, your testimony is based on programs you're cleared to know about." "Correct objection," Mitchell interrupted. "Counsel is insinuating classified programs without evidence." Sustained Judge Walters ruled immediately. "Miss Diaz, stick to established facts." The pattern continued through subsequent witnesses. A naval officer testified that women were physiologically incapable of meeting SEAL standards. Mitchell presented Navy records showing no women in SEAL training during Jasmine's service years. A military historian detailed SEAL history, emphasizing no women had ever completed training. Throughout the testimony, Jasmine remained silent, observing the courtroom with what Sophia recognized as tactical awareness. Her eyes regularly scanned exit points and individuals in the gallery, a habit developed through specialized training. Shadow maintained perfect discipline, despite the tense atmosphere, occasionally making eye contact with Jasmine in what appeared to be a coordinated communication system. Court security officers treated Jasmine with obvious disdain, checking her identification multiple times and standing unnecessarily close during breaks. At one point, Shadow subtly shifted position, placing himself between Jasmine and a particularly aggressive officer without any visible command. The dog's behavior seemed to be responding to threats Sophia couldn't perceive. Mitchell presented enlarged screenshots from Jasmine's social media accounts, mentioning her service and team, claiming these posts were deliberate attempts to fabricate a military background. "The defendant has systematically constructed this false narrative for years," Mitchell argued, "creating an elaborate fiction of service that never occurred." During a brief recess, Sophia noticed Shadow alert to something near the prosecution table, his ears forward and body tense. Jasmine placed a hand on his back and he immediately relaxed, though his attention remained fixed on that area. The veterans in the gallery made threatening gestures when they thought the judge wasn't looking. Sophia observed Jasmine controlling her breathing pattern in what appeared to be a trauma management technique, with Shadow providing grounding through tactical pressure against her leg. The day ended with Mitchell declaring, "Tomorrow, Your Honor, we will present incontrovertible proof that the defendant never served in any special operations unit, classified or otherwise." Judge Walters scheduled the next hearing with a tone suggesting he'd already decided the case. "The court takes stolen valor extremely seriously," he stated, looking directly at Jasmine. "Those who dishonor real service members will find no leniency here." Outside, the courthouse reporters swarmed them, shouting questions about Jasmine's fraudulent claims. The evening news featured only the prosecution's perspective, with commentators debating why a black woman from Detroit would fabricate such an outlandish military background. "The system is designed to discredit you," Sophia observed as they left the courthouse. "They're not just questioning your service, they're questioning your right to have served at all." Just before reaching their car, Sophia noticed a figure watching them intently from across the street. The person didn't join the protesters or approach, but seemed to be taking detailed notes. When Sophia pointed this out, Jasmine nodded slightly. "We're being observed," she confirmed in a tone that suggested this wasn't unusual in her experience. "Would you believe, Jasmine, if you were on that jury? I'm curious about your thoughts on how people judge others based on appearance and stereotypes. Comment number 1 if you think the system is stacked against Jasmine from the start, or number 2 if you believe the truth always prevails in court. Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed or experienced prejudice based on someone's appearance or background. Subscribe to follow Jasmine's fight for justice in this powerful story. What hidden evidence might turn this case around? And what could possibly explain Shadow's unusual behavior in that courtroom? The morning after the first hearing, Sophia arrived at her office to find a manila envelope on her desk with no return address or postage. Her assistant confirmed it had been hand-delivered before the office opened. Inside was a folder containing heavily redacted operation reports with classified stamps across the headers. Despite the redactions, Jasmine's name appeared in several documents, always in connection with something called Operation Phantom. A handwritten note accompanied the documents. "Not all heroes wear the same uniform." Sophia immediately called Jasmine, who agreed to meet at a park rather than the office. When Jasmine arrived with Shadow, Sophia noticed the dog performing a security sweep of the area before they settled on a bench. "Someone delivered classified documents to my office," Sophia explained, quietly, showing Jasmine the folder. "This could be evidence tampering or someone trying to help." Jasmine scanned the documents, her expression unchanged. "These are authentic," she finally said, "but using them could be considered a security breach." Before Sophia could respond, Jasmine suddenly stiffened her attention, focusing on something distant. Shadow immediately pressed against her leg in a specific pattern, his body creating gentle but firm pressure. Jasmine's breathing changed as she placed her hand on Shadow's back fingers, splayed in what appeared to be a practiced technique. Sophia recognized the signs of a PTSD episode being actively managed through the dog's specialized response. After several minutes, Jasmine's breathing normalized. That was different from standard service dog behavior, Sophia observed carefully. Jasmine met her eyes. Shadow was trained for operators with combat trauma. His responses are specialized. Trained where Sophia pressed. "Not in any program that officially exists," Jasmine answered. That night, Jasmine dreamed of the training facility, a remote compound, not marked on any official military maps. She was 22 again, one of 6 women selected for an experimental unit. Their training officer, a weathered SEAL commander, addressed them on the first day. "You don't exist. Your service will never be acknowledged. If you complete this training, your missions will remain classified for 50 years. You will never receive public recognition. You will face discrimination and accusations. You cannot defend yourselves with the truth. That is the additional burden you carry beyond what your male counterparts face. If that's unacceptable, leave now." None of them left. For the next 36 months, they trained alongside male SEAL candidates, meeting and exceeding the same standards. Of the 6 women who started, only 3 completed the program. Jasmine was the only black woman among them. The next morning, Sophia discovered digital inconsistencies in the prosecution's evidence. The Navy records Mitchell presented showed subtle signs of manipulation, with formatting differences between sections related to Jasmine and standard military documentation. While investigating these discrepancies, Sophia received a phone call from a blocked number. "This is retired Naval Commander Jackson Rivera," a male voice stated. "We need to meet regarding your client." They arranged to meet at a diner outside the city. Rivera, a gray-haired man in his 60s, with the physique of someone who'd maintained military discipline long after retirement, chose a corner booth with visibility of all entrances. "What I'm about to tell you is still technically classified," he began after confirming Sophia's identity. "But the statute of limitations on ruining a soldier's life should have expired by now." Rivera explained that during the early 2000s, the military ran classified programs integrating women into special operations units years before the official policy change. They needed operators who could move in environments where male operators would immediately be identified as American military, he explained. The program was compartmentalized. Most military leadership didn't know it existed. "Why not acknowledge it now?" Sophia asked. "Politics. Admitting they ran these programs before congressional approval would create legal issues. Plus, certain military leaders still oppose women in combat roles. Acknowledging these women succeeded decades ago undermines their position. Meanwhile, the prosecution team received a directive from a senior Defense Department official: conclude the Carter case immediately. Offer settlement with non-disclosure agreement. Priority Alpha. Mitchell was confused by the urgency but recognized the authority behind the order. Judge Walters received a similar communication requesting a private meeting with a government attorney not assigned to the prosecution team. The attorney, Margaret Wilson, presented him with a sealed document. This information is provided for context only, Your Honor. It cannot be entered into evidence or acknowledged in open court. Walters read the document with increasing surprise, but returned it without comment, aware of the boundaries being established. That evening, Shadow alerted to something in Jasmine's apartment moving in a specific search pattern before focusing on a small device hidden behind a light fixture. Surveillance, Jasmine commented, leaving the device in place. They're monitoring us. To demonstrate her point, she wrote on a notepad, "Not safe to talk here." Sophia was disturbed by the revelation, but not entirely surprised, given the classified nature of the case. To build their defense, Jasmine demonstrated specific tactical knowledge only taught to elite units, including advanced infiltration techniques and specialized maritime operations. She showed Sophia scars consistent with combat injuries, not explained by her official record, including a distinctive mark from shrapnel that matched known operation locations during her service period. While researching Judge Walters' background, Sophia discovered he had previously ruled against discrimination cases involving military women seeking combat positions. His public statement suggested traditional views about appropriate roles for women in the armed forces. His connection to the old guard military establishment made him an unlikely ally. As the next hearing approached, an anonymous veteran started an online thread questioning the official narrative about women in special operations. "There are operators whose service will never be acknowledged," the post stated. "Some of the bravest wore different uniforms than you'd expect." The thread attracted attention from a small group of women veterans who began showing subtle support for Jasmine. They wore specific blue pins to the courthouse, a symbol Jasmine recognized from her unit. The prosecution, sensing their case weakening hastily, added charges of document forgery and identity fraud, escalating potential penalties. Investigative journalist Sarah Chen, known for exposing government cover-ups, began examining discrepancies in official statements about Jasmine's case. Her initial article raised questions about the unusual redactions in Jasmine's service record and the military's aggressive pursuit of the case. The night before the second hearing, Jasmine revealed minimal details to Sophia about Operation Phantom under strict confidentiality. "It was an experimental, integrated special operations team," she explained. "We deployed to locations where traditional operators couldn't go without detection. Everything about our existence remains classified." To demonstrate her point, she gave Shadow a series of hand signals almost imperceptible to Sophia. The dog immediately executed a complex sequence of movements consistent with specialized military canine training, including tactical positioning, silent alert postures, and advanced threat assessment behaviors. No civilian service dog program taught these techniques. "Tomorrow will be challenging," Sophia warned, as they prepared their strategy. "Mitchell seems desperate to win at any cost, and Judge Walters has shown clear bias." "I've faced worse odds," Jasmine replied with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived situations most people couldn't imagine. "Shadow and I have gotten through tougher situations than a courtroom." As they finalized their approach, Shadow suddenly alerted to the window, his posture indicating potential threat rather than casual interest. Jasmine moved with practiced efficiency, checking sight lines while maintaining cover. The brief moment revealed more about her training than any document could have. Sophia realized they weren't just fighting against discrimination or bureaucracy. They were challenging a system designed to erase the contributions of people like Jasmine, operators whose very existence contradicted the military's official narrative. The truth was classified, but Shadow's behavior was not. The dog's specialized training might be their most compelling evidence if they could make the court see what was hiding in plain sight. The second day of court began with an unexpected motion from the prosecution. "Your Honor, the government requests these proceedings be sealed due to potential national security implications," Mitchell announced. The gallery stirred with confusion. Judge Walters appeared conflicted, studying Mitchell with newfound suspicion. "On what grounds does the prosecution suddenly claim national security concerns in a stolen valor case?" Sophia immediately challenged. "This appears to be an attempt to shield proceedings from public scrutiny." Mitchell conferred with a new attorney at his table before responding. "Information potentially relevant to classified operations may be inadvertently disclosed." Judge Walters considered briefly. "The court will grant a limited motion. The gallery may remain, but no recording devices will be permitted, and a security officer will review all notes taken during proceedings." Sophia recognized this as a partial victory. Whatever pressure had been applied to Walters hadn't completely succeeded. Mitchell called his first witness of the day, Commander Gregory Phillips, who testified that Jasmine had failed to complete basic training, contradicting her service record. When Sophia presented documentation proving Jasmine had graduated with honors, Phillips appeared confused. "These records must be incorrect," he insisted, growing visibly nervous when Jasmine looked directly at him. During this testimony, Shadow became unusually alert, his ears forward and body tensed as if detecting something about Phillips that humans couldn't perceive. Jasmine placed her hand briefly on Shadow's back, and the dog settled while maintaining his focus on the witness. Sophia's cross-examination was surgical. "Commander Phillips, when did you serve at Great Lakes Training Center?" "From 2004 to 2008, he replied confidently. "And you personally supervised training during this period?" "Yes, all female recruits passed through my division." Sophia produced military personnel records. "Then perhaps you can explain why these official records show you were stationed at Norfolk Naval Base during that entire period, never at Great Lakes." Phillips stammered. "There must be some mistake in the records." "Or in your testimony," Sophia countered. Judge Walters was watching Shadow's behavior with increasing interest, noting how the dog responded to specific moments in the testimony without visible commands from Jasmine. During the exchange, several people wearing small blue pins had entered the gallery, sitting quietly in different sections. Jasmine noticed them immediately, her composure momentarily slipping before she regained control. Shadow performed a subtle grounding technique without any visible command, pressing against her leg in a specific pattern. Mitchell introduced his next witness, Dr. Eleanor Hayes, a military psychologist. "Dr. Hayes, in your professional opinion, what might motivate someone to fabricate military service?" Mitchell asked. "There are several possibilities," Hayes testified. "Some individuals have what we classify as fabrication disorder, where they create elaborate false narratives for attention or benefits. Others may genuinely come to believe their fabrications through a process of self-deception." "And have you formed an opinion regarding the defendant, based on behavioral patterns evident in her social media and public statements? She displays classic signs of identity fabrication centered around military service." Sophia stood immediately. "Objection. The witness has never examined my client and is making a diagnosis based on social media posts." "I'm offering a professional assessment of observable behavior patterns," Hayes countered, "not a clinical diagnosis." To Sophia's surprise, Judge Walters sustained her objection. "The witness will refrain from diagnosing the defendant without proper examination." Throughout Hayes' testimony, Sophia noticed Judge Walters watching Shadow with unusual interest. The dog's disciplined behavior and tactical positioning seemed to be registering with the judge in unexpected ways. During cross-examination, Sophia established that Hayes had previously testified in 12 stolen valor cases, always for the prosecution, and had never found a defendant's claims legitimate. "So you approach these cases with a presumption of guilt," Sophia suggested. "I approach them with clinical objectivity," Hayes insisted. "The statistics simply support the rarity of legitimate claims in disputed cases." As Hayes stepped down, Sophia noticed a small group of silent observers wearing the blue pins had positioned themselves strategically around the courtroom. Jasmine had noticed them too, momentarily losing her composure. Shadow immediately performed a grounding technique without verbal command, pressing his body weight against her in a specific pattern that helped manage anxiety symptoms. The synchronized response happened so quickly and subtly that most observers missed it. Mitchell presented his next evidence with theatrical confidence. "Your Honor, the government has obtained video evidence of the defendant admitting to fabricating her service record." The courtroom screen displayed Jasmine, apparently telling someone off camera, "Of course I wasn't really there. They don't let people like me in those units." Sophia immediately objected. "This video has been edited. We request authentication before admission." Judge Walters, now visibly more engaged in the proceedings, ordered, "The prosecution will provide the complete unedited video for forensic examination before it can be entered into evidence." Mitchell appeared startled by the judge's suddenly stringent requirements. During a brief recess, Jasmine passed a note to Sophia, identifying a specific technical detail in Hayes' testimony that only someone with SEAL training would recognize as incorrect. The note included specialized terminology about tactical communications systems that Hayes had mischaracterized. Sophia noticed court security had inexplicably increased with new personnel not from the regular court staff positioned near exits. Media representatives were reporting on the inconsistencies in the government's case, with several articles questioning why prosecutors were pursuing Jasmine so aggressively. When court resumed, Shadow suddenly alerted to someone in the gallery, his body language changing subtly in a way that Jasmine immediately recognized. She whispered something to Sophia, who nodded and made a note. The prosecution team received an urgent message during the proceedings, causing visible discomfort among the attorneys. Mitchell requested another unexpected recess, which Judge Walters denied. "The court's time is valuable, counselor. Proceed with your case." After the day's proceedings concluded, Judge Walters called an evening recess, but not before watching Shadow's behavior as Jasmine prepared to leave. The dog performed a subtle security check of their path, positioning himself optimally for protection without any visible command. Outside the courthouse, Shadow alerted to a surveillance team following Jasmine and Sophia to their car. "We're being watched," Jasmine commented calmly as they drove away. Standard procedure when classified operations might be exposed. That evening, Jasmine finally revealed more of the truth to Sophia. "I was part of an experimental, integrated special operations team called Phantom Unit," she explained. "We were deployed to regions where traditional male operators would be immediately identified as American military. Our existence remains classified because we operated before congressional approval for women in combat roles." Meanwhile, Judge Walters conducted his own research late into the night. His military connections confirmed rumors of specialized units operating outside official channels. A phone call to a former colleague yielded cryptic but confirming information. "Howard, some questions are better left unasked, especially about units that don't officially exist." Walters discovered records of similar cases where veterans with classified service faced accusations of fraud, their cases mysteriously settled with sealed records. By morning, he'd found a historical precedent involving black sailors who had served in desegregated units before official integration. Their service records later modified to conceal early integration efforts. As the third day of trial approached, Jasmine prepared for final testimony, knowing she would need to break her silence without violating security protocols. Shadow sensed her resolve, staying closer than usual as she reviewed documents with Sophia. "Tomorrow, everything changes," Jasmine said quietly. "One way or another, the truth comes out. Do you think Judge Walters is starting to see the truth about Jasmine's service? Type number 1 in the comments if you believe Shadow's behavior is the key evidence in this case, or number 2, if you think the mysterious allies with blue pins will turn the tide. Hit the like button if you're rooting for Jasmine to finally receive the recognition she deserves. Subscribe to find out what happens when Jasmine finally breaks her silence in court. Will the classified truth finally be revealed? And who sent those mysterious documents to Sophia's office? Court reconvened with noticeably increased security and media presence. Government attorneys not previously involved in the case now occupied seats behind the prosecution table, whispering urgently to Mitchell throughout the morning. Judge Walters entered, looking as though he'd had little sleep, his eyes immediately finding Jasmine and Shadow at the defense table. Mitchell attempted to introduce what he called definitive evidence from Naval Special Warfare, a document purporting to show complete records of all special operations personnel during Jasmine's service period. Sophia immediately objected. "Your Honor, this document shows inconsistent formatting and appears to have been created specifically for this case rather than being an authentic military record." Judge Walters examined the document carefully. The court agrees. This appears artificially created with inconsistent headers and non-standard military document formatting. Objection sustained. Mitchell appeared flustered, checking his phone as if awaiting instructions. Sophia seized the opportunity to call Jasmine to testify in her own defense. As Jasmine took the stand, Shadow remained at the defense table, though his attention never left her. "Miss Carter, please describe your military background," Sophia began. Jasmine spoke clearly and directly. "I grew up in Detroit, raised by my grandmother after losing my parents at age 10. Despite attending an underfunded school, I maintained a 4.0 GPA and broke 3 school track records. My counselors discouraged military service, suggesting it wasn't appropriate for someone like me." She described her basic training experience with precise detail, naming instructors and specific exercises that demonstrated intimate knowledge of Navy protocols. "I graduated top of my class in basic training, which brought me to the attention of certain officers looking for candidates with specific capabilities." "What happened next?" Sophia asked. "I was recruited for a specialized program. Before I can discuss the nature of that program, I need to clarify what information I'm permitted to disclose without violating my security clearance." Judge Walters nodded. "The court understands the constraints of classified information. Proceed with caution," Jasmine continued. "I was selected for a classified program integrating women into special operations roles before the official policy change. Our unit was experimental, operating under extreme secrecy due to political sensitivities." She described the selection process in general terms, explaining the physical and psychological requirements that exceeded standard training. 6 women began the program. 3 completed it. I was the only black woman among them. Mitchell began his cross-examination with aggressive skepticism. "Miss Carter, you expect this court to believe you participated in a secret SEAL program that magically disappeared from all records. I expect nothing, Mr. Mitchell. I'm simply testifying to my service. If such a program existed, why has no one ever come forward about it? Security clearances and non-disclosure agreements prevent participants from discussing classified operations. The consequences for violations are severe." Mitchell's questioning grew increasingly hostile. "Isn't it more likely you've constructed this elaborate fantasy to obtain benefits you don't deserve?" Jasmine remained composed. "No, sir. Your story conveniently can't be verified because everything is supposedly classified. That's incredibly convenient, isn't it? There's nothing convenient about having your service erased, Mr. Mitchell." Mitchell produced a document with a flourish. "This psychological evaluation from 2013 indicates you failed a standard screening for special operations due to, quote, inconsistent performance under pressure and questionable decision-making, end, quote. How do you explain this?" Jasmine studied the document briefly. "This is a forgery. The form number in the header is incorrect for 2013 evaluations. The watermark is misaligned, and the signature block format wasn't implemented until 2015. Her detailed analysis of the document's inconsistencies demonstrated expertise in military documentation that surprised even Sophia. Judge Walters ordered the document submitted for forensic examination. Shadow suddenly became alert to something in the courtroom, his attention focused with unusual intensity. Jasmine noticed his change in posture immediately. Mitchell, growing frustrated with Jasmine's composed responses, made a critical mistake. Perhaps the Navy simply needed to fill some affirmative action quotas and gave you special treatment. The racially charged comment caused murmurs in the courtroom. Judge Walters immediately rebuked the prosecutor. "Mr. Mitchell, that comment is inappropriate and unprofessional. The court will not tolerate racial insinuations." Sophia introduced Commander Rivera's testimony about classified integration programs, carefully navigating around specific operational details. Government attorneys immediately objected on national security grounds. As the legal battle intensified, Jasmine faced an impossible choice: reveal classified information to save herself or maintain her oath of secrecy at personal cost. Mitchell pressed his advantage, sensing her dilemma. "Miss Carter, your entire defense rests on programs no one can verify and operations no one can confirm. Without evidence, how can this court possibly believe your extraordinary claims?" The courtroom fell silent, waiting for Jasmine's response. Shadow's alertness had increased his body language, signaling something only Jasmine understood. Mitchell continued his attack. "No woman has ever completed SEAL training. No black woman has ever served in special operations. These are facts, Miss Carter, not discrimination. Your claim is biologically and historically impossible." In this critical moment, with her entire identity and service questioned, Jasmine made her decision. She looked directly at Shadow and whispered a command in a specialized tactical language used only by certain special operations, K-9 handlers. The command was barely audible, but its effect was immediate and dramatic. Shadow instantly executed a complex sequence of movements only taught to elite special operations K-9s. He moved with precise tactical discipline, demonstrating advanced threat assessment, cover positioning, and silent communication signals used exclusively in classified operations. The courtroom fell silent, watching the undeniable display of specialized training. Judge Walters' expression transformed from skepticism to shock as he recognized specific protocols from his military background. Shadow's performance wasn't just impressive, it was classified. The techniques he demonstrated were not publicly known and couldn't be taught by civilian trainers. They represented tactics developed for specific covert operations and were exclusively available to Special Forces handlers. Mitchell attempted to dismiss the display. "A few dog tricks don't prove military service. This circus performance is irrelevant to the charges." Judge Walters silenced the prosecutor with a raised hand, his attention fixed on Shadow's continuing demonstration. "The court recognizes these are not tricks, counselor. These are specialized tactical maneuvers developed for specific military applications." He turned to Jasmine. "Miss Carter, that command sequence is part of the SOCOM Advanced Handler Protocol, classified Level 3, is it not?" The question itself revealed Walters' knowledge of classified programs. "Yes, Your Honor," Jasmine confirmed quietly. "Shadow was my assigned tactical K-9 partner during operations with Phantom Unit. His training reflects our specialized deployment requirements." The revelation hung in the courtroom. Shadow's performance had accomplished what no document could, providing undeniable proof of Jasmine's specialized training without explicitly violating classification restrictions. Judge Walters understood the significance immediately. No civilian could have trained Shadow to perform those specific sequences, nor would they have known the precise command language. Mitchell conferred urgently with the government attorneys, who appeared increasingly concerned. The carefully constructed case against Jasmine was unraveling not through classified documents, but through the living evidence of Shadow's specialized training. The dog had demonstrated what Jasmine could not say directly: she had served in a capacity that officially didn't exist, with training that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. As court adjourned for the day, Judge Walters watched Jasmine and Shadow leave with new understanding. The dog moved with the same tactical precision as his handler, both carrying themselves with the unmistakable bearing of special operators. The truth had been hiding in plain sight all along, embodied in the perfect coordination between a handler and her military working dog. Whatever happened next, the facade of official denial had cracked, revealing glimpses of a classified truth the military had tried desperately to keep hidden. Judge Walters opened the next day's proceedings with an unexpected question directed at Jasmine. "Miss Carter, The tactical command sequence you issued yesterday follows a protocol developed for specific operations. Can you explain how you became familiar with that protocol without revealing classified information? Mitchell immediately objected. Your Honor, this line of questioning assumes facts not in evidence and potentially compromises national security. Overruled, Walters responded firmly. The court observed the response sequence directly. Miss Carter may answer without referencing specific operations. Jasmine chose her words carefully. I was trained in advanced handler protocols at a specialized facility not included in standard military documentation. Shadow and I were paired during my final year of service for missions requiring canine tactical support. Judge Walters nodded thoughtfully. The court notes that these protocols were developed for a specific subset of special operations units with clearance requirements above top secret. Mitchell appeared increasingly agitated, frequently checking messages on his phone. A senior military officer entered the courtroom, approaching the prosecution table and passing a document to Mitchell, who read it with visible dismay. Your Honor, Mitchell announced the government wishes to withdraw all charges against Miss Seven. Carter effective immediately. The unexpected reversal caused a stir in the courtroom. Judge Walters studied Mitchell with narrowed eyes. The court requires an explanation for this sudden change in position after such aggressive prosecution. New information has come to light, suggesting continued litigation would not serve the interests of justice, Mitchell replied stiffly, reading directly from the document. Inadequate foundation for charges, Walters repeated skeptically. After 2 days of claiming irrefutable evidence, the court finds this explanation insufficient. Sophia rose quickly. Your Honor, while we welcome the withdrawal of charges, we request formal acknowledgement that Miss Carter served honorably as claimed. Without this acknowledgement, the cloud of suspicion remains continuing to damage her reputation and livelihood. The government attorneys conferred urgently behind Mitchell, who then addressed the court. The government can acknowledge that Miss Carter served honorably in the United States Navy and received an honorable discharge. Beyond that, certain aspects of her service remain classified. That's insufficient, Sophia countered. The stolen valor accusations have been widely publicized. A partial acknowledgement perpetuates the false narrative that she fabricated her service. Before Mitchell could respond, a new figure rose from the gallery. Your Honor, I request permission to address the court regarding this matter. The woman wore civilian clothes but carried herself with unmistakable military bearing. Judge Walters studied her with interest. Identify yourself for the record. Captain Miranda Reynolds, Judge, Advocate General's Corps, representing the Department of the Navy in matters of special classification. Mitchell appeared startled by her intervention. Your Honor, Captain Reynolds is not assigned to this case. Nevertheless, I'll hear what she has to say, Walters decided. Reynolds approached the bench presenting credentials that caused the judge's eyebrows to rise. Your Honor, after reviewing the proceedings of this case, the Department of the Navy acknowledges that certain specialized units operated under classification levels that prevent full public disclosure. While specific details remain classified, the Navy can confirm that integrated special operations units existed prior to official policy changes. She turned toward Jasmine. The Navy recognizes Miss Carter's service as legitimate and acknowledges that her documentation is authentic, though necessarily limited in detail due to ongoing classification requirements. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as Reynolds continued. Furthermore, the department formally apologizes for the mishandling of this case and the failure to properly intervene when Miss Carter's service was inappropriately questioned. Mitchell appeared blindsided by this official intervention. The government attorneys behind him were frantically making phone calls, clearly attempting to control damage. Judge Walters allowed the statement. The court accepts Captain Reynolds' clarification on behalf of the Navy. In light of this information, how does the prosecution wish to proceed? Mitchell had no choice but to formally withdraw all charges, though his expression suggested this outcome was far from what he'd anticipated. Judge Walters addressed the court. Based on the evidence presented, including the Department of the Navy's acknowledgement, this court finds the following: first, Miss Jasmine Carter served honorably in specialized units whose specific nature remains classified. Second, her documentation is authentic within the limitations imposed by classification requirements. Third, the accusations of stolen valor were without merit and resulted from incomplete information regarding classified service programs. The judge paused, looking directly at Jasmine. This court further finds that Ms. Carter has conducted herself with the discipline and integrity consistent with the highest traditions of naval service, maintaining classified information security, even when doing so caused her personal hardship. Shadow remained perfectly positioned beside Jasmine, his disciplined presence further confirming the specialized nature of their service. The veterans wearing blue pins throughout the courtroom subtly touched their pins in a gesture of solidarity and recognition. Judge Walters continued, "The charges against Miss Carter are dismissed with prejudice. Her military benefits are to be reinstated immediately and retroactively. The court further orders all costs and legal fees incurred by the defendant to be reimbursed by the government." He turned to the media representatives. "The court notes for the record that Miss Carter has been vindicated completely. Any reporting suggesting otherwise would constitute defamation." As the proceedings concluded, the courthouse clerk captured Judge Walters' powerful statement on her phone, the video already beginning its journey through social media channels. Outside the courthouse, a group of veterans formed a spontaneous honor guard as Jasmine exited. The crowd that had previously jeered now fell silent, witnessing the transformation of narrative from fraud to hero. Captain Reynolds approached Jasmine privately. "There are others like you still waiting for acknowledgement. Your case creates a precedent that might help them too." Jasmine nodded, understanding the significance beyond her personal vindication. Shadow remained vigilant at her side, still performing his duty as he'd been trained to do. The specialized bond between handler and military working dog had ultimately revealed a truth that classified documents could not. As media cameras captured the moment, Jasmine stood tall with the quiet dignity of a warrior who had served in silence, her vindication finally visible to the world that had doubted her. Shadow, the living proof of her classified service, remained perfectly positioned at her side, both of them still carrying the disciplined bearing that no documentation could ever fully capture or explain. Judge Walters called all parties into his chambers the following morning, including Captain Reynolds and a newly assigned government representative. "Before issuing my final ruling, I want to address several disturbing aspects of this case," Walters began. "The prosecution pursued Miss Tom Wan-Tu Carter with unusual aggression, presented manipulated evidence, and attempted to withdraw charges only when their case collapsed publicly." Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, we acted on the information available to us at the time." "Information that was deliberately incomplete," Walters countered. "This court has confirmed multiple instances of document manipulation and witness coaching." He turned to Captain Reynolds. "The court appreciates the Navy's belated acknowledgement, but questions why it required Miss Carter to nearly sacrifice her reputation and livelihood before intervention occurred." Reynolds nodded solemnly. "Your Honor, there were competing interests within the department regarding how to handle this situation. Some officials believed maintaining absolute classification was paramount, while others argued for protecting service members like Miss Carter from unjust accusations. And which position does the Navy officially take now, that we failed in our duty to protect a sailor who served honorably?" Reynolds answered. "The department recognizes this failure and is implementing new protocols for handling similar cases. The government attorney suggested a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement. The department is prepared to offer substantial compensation if Miss Carter agrees not to discuss certain aspects of her service publicly." Sophia looked to her client. "It's your decision, but accepting would mean the full truth remains hidden, potentially affecting others in your position." Jasmine considered briefly. "I won't sign additional non-disclosure agreements beyond my existing security obligations. The acknowledgement of my service must be public and complete within classification limitations." Judge Walters nodded approvingly. "The court supports this position. Justice requires public vindication when accusations were public. When court reconvened, Shadow alerted to increasing tension, positioning protectively near Jasmine, without visible command. Judge Walters noted the dog's response further confirmation of specialized training. This court has considered all evidence presented, including demonstrations of specialized military working dog protocols not available to civilian handlers. Walters began. The evidence conclusively establishes that Miss Carter served honorably in capacities consistent with her documentation, though specific details remain properly classified. He directly addressed the pattern of discrimination evident throughout the case. This court further finds disturbing evidence of systemic bias in how Miss Carter's service claims were evaluated compared to similar claims by white male veterans. Multiple witnesses automatically dismissed her possible service based solely on gender and race, despite lacking security clearance to make such determinations. The prosecution team appeared in disarray as their case completely collapsed. Media cameras captured Judge Walters' changing demeanor, his initial skepticism transformed to righteous indignation at the injustice Jasmine had faced. Mitchell made a final attempt to salvage the case with a procedural objection regarding classified evidence, which Walters immediately overruled. "This court rules as follows," Walters announced. "All charges against Jasmine Carter are dismissed with prejudice. Her military benefits shall be reinstated immediately, with full back payments from date of suspension. The court formally recognizes her service as legitimate within the classification constraints governing specialized units." The court clerk recorded Judge Walters' statement as he continued. "This court acknowledges that certain specialized programs existed during Miss Carter's service period that integrated women into combat roles before official policy changes. While specific operational details remain classified, their existence is hereby recognized by this court." Government attorneys attempted to classify the judge's statement, claiming national security concerns. The court rejects this claim. Walters responded firmly. "Acknowledging the existence of classified programs without revealing operational details serves the public interest and is essential to justice in this case." Jasmine maintained perfect composure as vindication arrived, her military training evident in her disciplined response to victory. Shadow relaxed his alert posture slightly, sensing the resolution of the immediate threat. The veterans with blue pins stood in silent support throughout the courtroom, their presence a subtle acknowledgement of shared classified service. Judge Walters concluded with an unprecedented announcement. "This court is referring this case to the Inspector General for investigation into the handling of evidence, potential witness tampering, and the systemic discrimination evident throughout these proceedings." The media captured this historic moment, as Walters' ruling directly challenged military secrecy policies that had allowed discrimination to flourish. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Jasmine for comment. She responded with characteristic restraint. "I served my country honorably, and am grateful the court recognized that service. I hope this ruling helps other veterans whose classified service has left them vulnerable to similar accusations." Sophia addressed practical matters with the press. Miss Carter's employment status should be immediately restored, her housing situation stabilized, and her reputation publicly rehabilitated. "We call on media outlets that published unverified accusations to issue immediate corrections." As they departed, Captain Reynolds approached them privately. "There will be an official ceremony next month closed to the public, but significant nonetheless. Certain commendations have been pending for a very long time." Jasmine nodded, understanding the meaning behind the carefully worded statement. Shadow remained vigilant as they moved through the crowd. His training never fully deactivated, even in moments of victory. That evening, as Jasmine returned to her apartment, she found a small package containing a specialized military coin, not officially acknowledged in any public record. The message was clear. Others like her had witnessed her vindication and recognized its significance for their own hidden service. Judge Walters watched the evening news coverage from his home, satisfied that justice had prevailed despite powerful interests opposing it. His ruling had created a precedent that would affect similar cases throughout the military justice system, potentially opening doors for other veterans with classified service histories. Shadow performed his nightly security check of Jasmine's apartment, moving with the same tactical precision that had ultimately revealed the truth in court. The specialized training that couldn't be fabricated had become the most powerful evidence of all, proving what classified documents could not. As videos of the ruling spread across social media platforms, the narrative transformed from skepticism to recognition, from accusation to vindication. Jasmine Carter, once branded a fraud, was now becoming a symbol for others who had served in silence, their contributions erased by classification and discrimination. The truth, partially revealed through Shadow's response to a whispered command, had begun to echo far beyond that courtroom. Judge Walter's ruling video spread across social media platforms with unprecedented speed, accumulating millions of views within 24 hours. The dramatic moment when Shadow responded to Jasmine's whispered command became instantly iconic, shared with captions like, "The truth they tried to hide," and "Watch the moment history changed." The military faced immediate pressure to acknowledge the existence of classified programs integrating women into special operations before official policy changes. While specific operational details remained classified, the Department of Defense issued a carefully worded statement. Certain specialized units operated under classification levels that permitted selective integration based on mission-specific requirements prior to formal policy implementation. Jasmine received a formal apology from the Veterans Affairs Department, with her benefits reinstated and back paid from the date of suspension. Atlanta Veterans Memorial Hospital Administrator Richard Whitfield was suspended pending investigation into his handling of Jasmine's initial visit. Veterans groups that had previously condemned Jasmine now issued public apologies, with several organizing support campaigns to help restore her reputation and stability. Shadow, once questioned as merely a pet, became a powerful symbol for service dogs supporting veterans with PTSD. His specialized training highlighted the sophisticated support these animals provided beyond what the public generally understood. Judge Howard Walters faced both criticism and praise for his ruling. Military traditionalists accused him of compromising security protocols, while civil rights organizations commended his courage in challenging systemic discrimination. Several judicial organizations invited him to speak about balancing national security with justice. The Department of Defense announced a comprehensive review of how veterans with classified service histories could receive appropriate recognition without compromising operational security. The review specifically addressed the unique challenges faced by women and minorities whose service in classified units left them vulnerable to stolen valor accusations. Jasmine declined numerous media interview requests, maintaining the same disciplined privacy that had characterized her military service. When asked why she refused high-profile television appearances, she simply stated, "This was never about publicity. It was about truth and justice, not just for me but for others who served." At a veteran support event the following month, Shadow demonstrated his specialized skills in a carefully choreographed presentation that revealed his capabilities without exposing classified techniques. The demonstration drew attention to the sophisticated training of military working dogs and their critical role in supporting veterans with combat trauma. Former members of Jasmine's classified unit made anonymous contact, sending subtle messages of support and recognition. These communications remained private, respecting ongoing security requirements, while acknowledging the shared experience of serving in units whose existence couldn't be publicly claimed. A congressional hearing was announced to investigate discrimination in special operations training and deployment, with specific attention to classified programs that operated outside public oversight. Several members of Congress who had previously opposed women in combat roles now questioned whether their positions had been based on incomplete information about women already serving effectively in those capacities. Jasmine established a foundation supporting minority women pursuing military careers, with special emphasis on advanced training opportunities and mentorship programs. The foundation operated quietly, but effectively creating pathways for young women facing the same barriers Jasmine had encountered. Military academies reported a significant increase in applications from minority women following the case's resolution. Many applicants specifically cited Jasmine's vindication as inspiration for their interest in military service, particularly in specialized combat roles. Judge Walters accepted an invitation to speak at a judicial conference about identifying and addressing bias in military cases. Without revealing classified information, he discussed how preconceptions about gender and race had nearly resulted in a profound miscarriage of justice. Sophia Diaz received the prestigious Civil Liberties Attorney Award for her work on Jasmine's case. In her acceptance speech, she highlighted the intersection of classification, discrimination, and justice. When truth is classified, injustice finds fertile ground. Our challenge is to protect necessary secrets while preventing their use as tools of discrimination. Shadow received special commendation from a veterans organization for his role in Jasmine's case, recognized as Service Dog of the Year for demonstrating the sophisticated support these animals provide beyond public understanding. The military formally announced expanded programs integrating women into all combat roles, with selection based solely on capability rather than gender. Though the announcement didn't reference Jasmine's case directly, the timing suggested a connection to the revelations about earlier classified integration efforts. 2 months after the ruling, Jasmine attended a private ceremony at the Pentagon, where she finally received long-withheld commendations for her classified service. The ceremony remained closed to the public, but its occurrence represented official acknowledgement at the highest levels. Officer Derek Simmons, who had supported the hospital's discrimination during the initial confrontation, faced disciplinary action for misconduct and underwent mandatory bias training. The police department issued a public apology to Jasmine. Judge Walters began volunteering with veteran support organizations, particularly those focusing on service members with classified backgrounds who faced unique challenges in civilian transition. His judicial expertise helped many veterans navigate legal hurdles related to their security clearances and service records. Shadow's role expanded to include training new service dogs, specifically for veterans with PTSD from special operations backgrounds. His unique combination of tactical training and medical support capabilities provided a model for more sophisticated service dog programs. The military established new protocols for recognizing classified service, creating secure mechanisms for veterans to receive appropriate benefits and recognition without compromising operational security. The protocols specifically addressed the challenges faced by women and minorities who had served in classified capacities. 6 months after her vindication, Jasmine testified before Congress about discrimination in military special operations. Shadow accompanied her to the hearing, maintaining his vigilant presence at her side. During her testimony, Shadow suddenly alerted to something in the hearing room. Jasmine whispered a command, and Shadow performed a subtle maneuver, revealing a threat. Security officers responded immediately, apprehending a government official attempting to disrupt the testimony with recording devices prohibited in the secure hearing. Judge Walters watched from the gallery as justice came full circle, the specialized training that had vindicated Jasmine now protecting her as she helped create systemic change. Jasmine's testimony became a catalyst for military-wide reforms, addressing both gender integration and racial discrimination in specialized units. As she concluded her historic testimony, Shadow rested calmly at her feet, mission finally complete. The German Shepherd, who had been dismissed as a pet, had helped reveal a truth the military had tried to hide for decades. Together, handler and military working dog had changed not just their own story, but potentially the stories of countless others who had served in silence. Have you ever witnessed a moment when the truth finally broke through against all odds? What's your reaction to Jasmine and Shadow's incredible journey, from accusation to vindication? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who appreciate stories of courage and justice. How many other heroes might be out there, their service hidden by classification and prejudice? Thank you for joining us for this powerful true story. Remember, sometimes the most important truths are revealed not through documents or testimony, but through the unbreakable bond between a warrior and her loyal companion. Jasmine Carter's journey reveals how deeply prejudice can become institutionalized, creating systems where truth itself becomes classified while discrimination operates in plain sight. Her story demonstrates that sometimes the most pervasive injustices are those hidden behind official denial and bureaucratic walls. When institutions use security and tradition to shield discrimination, challenging these systems requires extraordinary courage. The case exposes how quickly society dismisses accomplishments when they come from unexpected sources. Jasmine faced immediate skepticism not because her credentials were questionable, but because her identity challenged preconceptions about who could achieve excellence in elite military units. Shadow's role teaches us that truth often manifests in unexpected ways. When documentation can be manipulated and testimony discredited, sometimes the most powerful evidence comes through actions that cannot be fabricated. The specialized training visible in the bond between handler and service dog ultimately revealed what classified documents could not. Judge Walter's transformation reminds us that justice requires willingness to question our own biases. His journey from skepticism to advocacy demonstrates how recognizing discrimination often begins with seeing patterns previously accepted as normal. Ultimately, Jasmine's vindication shows that persistent courage in the face of systemic injustice can create ripples of change far beyond individual cases, opening doors for others whose stories have been similarly silenced or erased. Has society's perception of who can be a hero limited our recognition of extraordinary individuals? I'm curious whether you've witnessed situations where someone was unfairly judged based on their appearance rather than their abilities. Comment below about a time when you or someone you know faced prejudice despite clear qualifications. Has Jasmine's story changed how you might respond when witnessing discrimination? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help spread these important messages about courage and justice. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about resilience in the face of systemic challenges. Share this video with friends and family who need to understand how discrimination operates in subtle ways throughout our institutions. Thank you for joining us in witnessing Jasmine and Shadow's extraordinary journey. May their story inspire all of us to question our assumptions and stand firm in our truth, even when powerful systems attempt to deny it. Remember, sometimes the most important changes begin with a single whispered command that reveals what others refuse to see.